In Psych 2500, you're going to be developing a research proposal by the end of the semester. And the first step in that process is to start thinking about and developing a research question and hypothesis. I want to give you some information about how to do that so that it's a little bit easier and you're setting yourself up for all the other steps that will come into play later as you're developing your research proposal. The foremost important thing is that when you're thinking about a topic, something that you want to study is something that's of interest to you, but also that has to be psychological. We know that in the social sciences, all those topics are kind of intertwined and interrelated, whether it's sociological, psychological, economics, business, all of those are kind of connected to one another. But for the purposes of the assignment that you'll be working towards, is that you should pick a psychological topic, one that involves at an individual level and involves some sort of mental process. This could be stress, this could be a way we think, feel, but it can't be a broad topic that typically would fall under a category of sociology, let's say. Keep the topic simple. It should be something that's interesting to you, of course, but also you want to think about how to simplify it so that it's not too burdensome or overwhelming as you learn about the topic over time. When you're thinking about your research question, foremost, we want to think about, well, what do you want to know? This course is really designed to help you to not learn about what other people have done research on, although that's a part of it. You'll be doing that for your literature review. You'll find out what studies were previously done so that you can propose your own type of research study. But before all that, what are you interested in? What do you want to know about? What should have that topic in mind? And by the way, you might think about going to your old Psych 101 textbook or your other textbooks this semester to kind of get some ideas about what you'd be interested in. I know it can be sometimes overwhelming when it's so open-ended, but look on the internet. Take a day and sort of think about what do you find interesting psychologically about people, and use that to help you identify a topic. And then you want to ask yourself, is it psychological? Can you think of key words that are within psychology that would help you to learn more about that topic? And of course, is it specific enough? Does it include that behavior, feeling, cognition, something that it will eventually be measurable? Now, you will not be conducting a study in this course, but you'll be proposing one. So at some point, you'll need to think about, is that a mental process that you can measure? Is the question or topic that you have in mind worthy of further study? And perhaps we already know the answer, so it wouldn't be worth continuing the line of research if it's something that's a given or understood within the psychological community. And then lastly, is the topic itself ethical? I certainly don't want to start pursuing an unethical topic, but it's something to just keep in mind as you are thinking about a topic. So let me give you some examples of some bad research questions and explain why they might not be the most formidable in terms of long-term research for your proposal. So, for example, is sleep good for you? Well, everyone kind of knows that sleep is good for you, so you don't need to continue to further that research. It may not be as worthy. Can psychotherapy help with stress? Generally speaking, any type of treatment can be useful in terms of reduction of stress. So number one, it may be too broad. What kind of therapy are you talking about? But it kind of is a given also. It's already known that psychotherapy can be useful. Can religion heal a person? Again, too broad. It may not be psychological, and some people might question that aspect of it. And then how would you even think about measuring healing? That'll be more clear as we go through the semester, but how would one take that construct and break it down so it's measurable? How do we fix racism? And that's a sociological question. Whenever you get into an ism or sort of a social problem, then you're thinking more in terms of sociological aspects rather than psychological. So you'll need to think about how could you bring that into a more individual level. And then maybe another example is, why do people commit crime? Everyone wants to know, why do people do what they do, particularly when it's a heinous or some sort of criminal act. Again, it's too broad. There are so many reasons or variables that could affect that. So you'll want to narrow down your topic a little bit further. And also with that particular question, it becomes an ethical concern. When you talk about our incarcerated folks, they are not in a position to make their own individual decisions. So when we get to the ethics chapter, you'll see more about that. Some better examples. Using the sleep. Does personality affect sleep? It may not be the worthiest of topics. Does it really matter if our personality is a certain way? If you have high levels of openness to experience or conscientiousness, does it really matter if it affects sleep? Maybe. It might be useful, but it's certainly psychological, so it's a better example. How does breaking news notifications affect our stress level? Now that might be a more specific and more psychological question about an example of how to measure stress or stress-related topics. Back to the one previously, we talked about religion and how it can heal or not. Well, that was too broad. So the more specific example is, can daily prayer increase gratitude? In terms of gratitude from positive psychology, we understand that is one of the most effective practices one can use in order to increase or improve subjective well-being as a positive coping strategy. So we're getting much more clear on our question so that it becomes a little more directed. Can implicit bias affect healthcare decisions? So taking a question about isms, whether it's sexism, racism, any phobias, we can use a more psychological process to understand behavior a little bit better. So it would be worthy, it's psychological, and one of those key psychological terms is that this is related to cognition. Is there a correlation between criminal behavior and substance use? Well, we might already kind of know that answer a little bit, but it'd be worthy of finding out more. Certainly it's more of a psychological question. So therefore, all of these are better examples of research questions. There's not one perfect research question in mind, but it is important to kind of think about how to distill it, to make it more specific, to make it psychological, to help guide that, make that foundation for the rest of the work that you'll be doing in research methods. And then lastly, after you have a solid research question, you want to think about how to develop a hypothesis. And there are 4 elements that are really important in developing a hypothesis. One is it logical? Does it make sense? Use premise statements to help form a more logical hypothesis. Is your hypothesis testable? Meaning, can it be something that you can actually measure in the future? Is it refutable? One of the more important things about a hypothesis is that it cannot be a question. It has to be a statement that either you can retain or reject. That's the whole goal. So if it's not a statement that can be refuted, then you need to do some work on that. And then lastly, is it positive? Meaning you're taking out any negative, not negative connotation, but negative statements like not in your hypothesis out to make it more clear and more clarified. So that's overall a picture of how to develop your research question and hypothesis. I hope that's useful to you, and more to come about the research proposal as we progress through the semester.